Look, have you ever felt like your brain is literally just glitching? Like you're dragging yourself through this thick fog of mental exhaustion that you just cannot seem to shake? Well, welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a modern epidemic. We are unpacking the dark psychology of brain rot. We're going to look at the hard data showing how modern tech doesn't just, casually distract us. It fundamentally rewires the human mind. From endless scrolling to absolute dopamine overload, this is a gripping look into exactly what happens when our digital world completely hijacks our cognitive limits.
We're going to anchor this whole thing today by looking at one incredibly common yet tragic case study. He accidentally did it to himself. Just think about the sheer psychological weight of that for a second. A totally brilliant mind, a capable student, literally destroying his own mental clarity piece by piece and having absolutely no idea it was happening until the damage was already done.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Part 1. The smart student. We've got to establish our baseline here. We're talking about a perfectly healthy, ambitious brain, totally capable of deep thought and long-term focus. But the drop-off? It's terrifyingly fast. Year 1? High praise. He's at the absolute top of his game. Year 2? Endless reels. Just a subtle shift, right? A little more screen time, a few more short-form videos. But by year 3? Complete glitch. He completely lost the ability to sit still. He couldn't even focus on a single page of a book. He couldn't think clearly through this thick, buzzing static noise that had essentially taken over his entire mind. So, how does a brilliant mind just collapse that fast? Part 2, the trap of speed. You see, this trap was built with things society tells us are perfectly normal, things we practically need for modern life. Let's look at the mechanics of overstimulation. Short videos, exploding notifications, constant multitasking, flashing dopamine visuals. Imagine every single one of these hitting your brain at the exact same time. Swipe, ping, flash, reward. Your brain is suddenly drowning in this hyper-fast sea of information, just desperately trying to keep up with the overwhelming speed of a digital world that never ever sleeps. And it creates this vicious cycle of speed. Fast entertainment, fast rewards, fast distraction. And what's really interesting here is that his brain literally physically adapted to this pace. It started training its own neural pathways to actually crave these instant dopamine hits. It's no longer just a bad habit, right? It becomes biological. The rewired brain essentially starts screaming, hey, if I don't get a flash of visual stimulation every 2 seconds, something is terribly wrong. Part 3, the rewired reality. So what actually happens when you force a hyperspeed, rewired brain to exist in the painfully slow physical world? The contrast here is visceral. On the left, the old reality, a peaceful brain, deep books, the simple ability to just sit and be present. On the right, the rewired reality, overheated static and endless scrolling. Sitting down to study didn't just get hard, it became physically painful. Reading a physical book? Impossible. He'd read the exact same sentence 5 times and absorb absolutely nothing, all because his brain was starving for that hyperstimulation it was addicted to. And this bleeds into literally everything. Silence becomes incredibly uncomfortable. Normal pacing just feels way too slow. Even basic conversations become totally exhausting. Our student was sitting in quiet rooms filled with crippling anxiety, mentally disconnected from his friends, his family, even his own thoughts. Surrounded by people, but trapped inside a mind buzzing with constant mental static. But here's the truly sober reality of this explainer. Millions of people are experiencing this exact same thing right now. We're talking massive crowds of people walking down the street, sitting in university lectures, lying awake in bed at 2 a.m, just staring blankly at glowing screens. Millions are suffering from this exact same mental overload. It's collective brain rot on a massive global scale. But out of everything we've looked at so far, what do you think is the scariest part of all this? Part 4, the horrifying realization. The absolute darkest piece of this entire psychological breakdown is that most people are completely blind to their own transformation. And this brilliantly illustrates the false blame versus the dark reality. Students wrongly blame themselves. They say, oh, I'm lazy, I'm unmotivated, I'm just undisciplined. They stare at their failed goals and just hate themselves. But the dark reality? Overstimulated, overheating brain, constant dopamine. They wrongly blame their character, completely failing to realize that endless algorithms have literally chemically altered the structure of their minds. For our smart student, this ultimate realization crashed down on him in exactly one night. Picture this, a dark,
Perfectly silent room. The only light is this cold blue glow of a phone screen on his exhausted face. And in that quiet moment of pure burnout, the horrifying truth of what he had accidentally done to himself finally clicked. He took a hard look at the missing pieces of his own mind. Attention span, gone, completely evaporated. Focus, broken into a million fragments. Mental peace, empty. When the digital noise finally stopped for even a fraction of a second, there was nothing left but this terrifying emotional emptiness. The concentration required to form one coherent thought literally didn't exist anymore. His brain had been trained for distraction. I really want you to let that sink in for a second. These platforms, the endless feeds, the algorithms, they successfully programmed him to fail at deep thinking. Every swipe, every tap, every second of scrolling was a repetition. It was a rigorous mental workout, actively training his mind to shatter its own focus on command. And this reveals the true cost of modern life. 1. Reshaping your brain. 2. Hijacking your precious attention. 3. Numbing your complex emotions. And 4. Systematically destroying deep thought. The core takeaway from this explainer isn't just some basic warning about screen time. It's about how modern life is actively dismantling the very cognitive tools we need to function, dream, and actually achieve anything. And this is where it gets personal for every single one of us. The longer the stimulation continues, the harder silence becomes. If you constantly demand hyperspeed from your own neurology, eventually true peace is going to feel like a literal physiological threat. I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought as we wrap up our explainer today. The most dangerous addictions are the ones society calls normal. Take a really hard, honest look at your own daily habits. Are you actually in control of your focus, or is your brain being silently rewired right now? Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive. Stay curious, stay focused, and I'll catch you in the next one.